So you're leaving the UK. Wow. There's so many things to consider when we make this decision. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Zoe and I am planning to sell up everything that I own in the UK and leave and travel until I find my ideal retirement place. But it's not like we just wake up in the morning and decide, oh, we're going to just go. There's lots of things to consider when we are moving abroad, whether we're moving to one location or we're going to do what I'm doing and slow travel around, going to different countries until we find somewhere that we would like to retire. So what are those considerations? Because they're very important. Well, of course, the first one is, where are we going to go? Where can we afford to go? You know, one of the reasons for leaving the UK is the cost of living. So you don't want to find yourself in a similar position somewhere else. But there's lots of options. There's lots of places where you can get retirement visas if you're over 50, some countries 55, some a little bit older. And if you're like me and you're undecided and you just want to travel around for a while, well, I'm going to use tourist visas to start with anyway and go, for instance, to Malaysia for 90 days on a tourist visa, and then on to Thailand for 60 days on a tourist visa, Vietnam, 90 days on a tourist visa, and you've got South America. Oh, you've got the whole world. Oh, so many places. Japan, South Korea. There's so many places I want to go. I'm sure there are for you too. Now, there are some countries that are more difficult to get into. Australia. I'm not sure about New Zealand actually, but yeah, I know I can't get a visa for Australia. Caribbean's very difficult to get into unless you've got lots of money. But really need to think about where you want to go. And obviously Europe is a very popular destination, and although we're no longer part of the European Union, you can still get visas and go and live in Portugal or Spain. So, you know, there are options. And I know from my previous video, a lot of you have plans to do the same and you've found your location, which is super exciting. But that's the first thing to consider. Now, the other big one to consider is what happens with our pension in the UK and our state pension. So we need to be aware that in a lot of countries, our entitlement to state pension will still remain, but the amount we get will be frozen from the date we leave. Now, this doesn't apply to all countries because there's an agreement with the UK and some places, like in Europe, where you'll continue to get the increases each year through the triple lock. But in other countries, there will be no increases. And that's something to bear in mind because, you know, the pension is what it is now, but how much is that going to be worth in 10 years if you're still getting exactly the same amount with no increases? So that's really something to bear in mind. Yeah, and that might be a real struggle for some people. I mean, the trick is to pick a country where it will increase. But it depends where you want to live, doesn't it? But that's one of the major things to consider. Now, what are you going to do with your home in the UK? Are you going to rent it out? Are you going to sell everything and go? What are you going to do with the money that you get from the sale? These are all things to consider because, you know, everybody's different and, you know, you don't want to run out of money in your retirement. So financial planning is quite key. And where are you going? How much money are you going to need? You know, have a budget. Just make sure that you're going to be able to sustain your way of living. I have spreadsheets for every different scenario. And every time I speak to my tax and my pension guys, I update it. And yeah, it's something you really do have to consider. And the cost of living is only going to get higher in the UK. So if you do want to come back in 5 years, 10 years, you need to bear in mind how you're going to afford that. Make sure that you don't sell your house and have nothing left. And if you're renting, consider the tax implications. Will you be subject to capital gains? There's so much to think about. There really is. That's why I say you can't just wake up and say, oh, tomorrow I'm going. You've got to plan all these things. Another big one, and I did my video yesterday on this, was medical insurance. Now, we need to make sure we can get medical cover where we are. Now, some countries, you can get the same cover in those countries because you're a UK citizen. So some of the European countries, I think it's the S1 form you get. Yeah, it's the S1 form. And you can do it, but a lot of countries you don't. You're going to have to get insurance. And insurance is not cheap. Especially the older you get, the more expensive it gets. You need to find the right cover and the right policy for you. Now, when you settle in a place, you may well find a good private medical insurance local to that country. But it is something you really need to consider. And I know some places medical treatment is, it's not inexpensive. But don't forget, when you're watching videos and some people are saying, oh, this was a lot cheaper than home, they're US citizens. In the UK, we don't pay anything for our healthcare, so everything is going to be more expensive. We need to bear that in mind. Now, the other thing is family. How are you going to cope leaving your family behind? And I know a lot of you on my video a couple of weeks ago, this was a big thing for you. But one lady, she was saying her family have all left the UK and she's here now and she misses them, but she's happy that they're living their lives. It was such a lovely story. And it is something to consider. How, can your family come and visit you? What are their means? Can they get there? How are you going to keep up communication? I have an agreement with my son that every week I'm going to video call with my granddaughters and keep that communication going. And they'll come and visit me. But, I will come back to the UK and visit as well, or my family, but it is one thing to take into consideration. It's going to be hard leaving them behind. Now you go to a new country and everything is different. You might not speak the language, the cultures will be different, the food will be different, everything will be different. It won't be like this at all. Now for me, I love that. I love exploring new cultures. I love seeing different ways of life. But are you ready for that? Just make sure that you are. I see people sometimes when I'm traveling and they really cannot adapt to a different environment. And, for some people it is hard. And you really have to go with the flow because it's just not going to be like the UK at all. And sometimes, like when I'm away and I don't speak the language, it can be very lonely as well. So, think about picking up some of the local terms or pick countries where they do speak some English at least. Just make your life easier. Just be comfortable. You don't want to go and be miserable or feel lonely. But a lot of countries also have lots of meet-up groups, so there's plenty of opportunities to meet people and find out where the other expats hang out and where they stay and integrate with those. That make life a lot easier. But for me, embracing new cultures and new way of life is just wonderful. I just love all that. So I'm ready to do that. Now, I'm sure there'll be places where I'm like, just not fitting in here. I felt that on my travels sometimes. But, life is for living. Yeah, embrace. And my final point, and I think it's an obvious one, but I'm so surprised with how many people don't do this. Don't forget to get an international driving license. Even if you don't think you're going to drive or get a scooter or whatever, you might as well get them. They're quite easy to get from the post office. So just get one anyway so you always have it with you, because if you find you need it in a country, like say you do want to hire a car and go somewhere and you don't have it, you're going to be stuck because you can't pop back to the UK and get it. So make sure you do that. And just go back to the medical point. Do double check that if you are taking any medications, that your country that you're going to will also provide them for you. Quick Google search will check that for you. Anyway, these are all the sort of things I think about, still continue to think about in my move. I did not wake up one morning and say, that's it, I'm going. It took me a long time to really think about all the moving parts that go with it. And did I really want to do it with, because, it's a little bit of a hassle, isn't it, having to sort of have visas and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I was like, yes, I want to leave. I just want to explore more and find my perfect retirement place. Anyway, these are the things to think about. Hope that's helpful. And thanks for watching. I'll speak to you all soon. Ciao!